It's Tuesday, June 15. This is the news on PBCJ. I'm Simone Absalom Gale. The Health and Wellness Ministry is reporting that 11,423 Jamaicans received vaccines island-wide during the two-day Blitz operation held on Saturday, June 12 and Sunday, June 13, 2021. Of this number, 10,608 were persons receiving their second dose of the AstraZeneca vaccine, while 815 persons received their first dose. The ministry will continue its vaccination of healthcare workers, teachers, persons over 50 years old, members of the Jamaica Defence Force and Constabulary Forces, and staff members of PICA, DCS, and Jamaica Customs. The ministry is currently contacting persons to arrange for their second dose of the AstraZeneca vaccine where needed. Members of the public who have not received their call and are due for their second dose are being encouraged to contact the National Vaccination Hotline. Additionally, persons are being reminded that they are not fully vaccinated until they have received their second dose of the vaccine. The Health and Wellness Ministry on Monday launched the COVID-19 vaccination CommCare software, which captures demographics and basic health information of over 160,000 Jamaicans who have so far received their AstraZeneca vaccine. This software has been rolled out across the island in hospitals, healthcare centers, and vaccination centers.
As everybody knows, COVID-19 has had a massive impact on the lives and livelihoods of all Jamaicans. And the private sector felt compelled to play its part in the recovery of our beloved country from this pandemic, particularly in regard to assisting with the national vaccination plan. This effort led us to signing our first MOU, which was with the Ministry of Health on February 17, and our focus was on three main areas: to provide technical and financial assistance to the national vaccination plan, to accelerate the transition to herd immunity, or population immunity, the key in our view to getting businesses back up and running on a sustainable basis, and finally to donate vaccines to select public sector entities.
With the use of this software, the ministry will be quickly able to report on the number of persons vaccinated. Leading up to the introduction of this CommCare software, approximately 150 trainers were trained on how to use the system, who have gone on to train over 1,000 healthcare workers. Today, June 15, is being observed as World Elder Abuse Awareness Day. It's being held under the theme Access to Justice. The World Health Organization, WHO, says violence, abuse, and neglect of older persons are among the most hidden and underreported violations of human rights. In Jamaica, more than 392,000 persons are said to be over the age of 60, and authorities say they are seeing an increase in the reporting of elder abuse and neglect. The Ministry of Labour and Social Security, through the National Council for Senior Citizens, is hosting a webinar in observance of World Elder Abuse Awareness Day under the sub-theme Safeguarding Older Persons During COVID-19 and Beyond. The webinar is being held to engage Jamaicans in talks about the elderly and also to educate the public about the rights of older persons, especially during the pandemic where the vulnerability of the senior citizen is most evident. The Ministry of Education is warning against prohibiting students from sitting exams because of their hair. The ministry issued the warning in a statement on Monday following reports of students being turned away because they needed a haircut. The statement did not give details about the alleged incident, but says while investigations are ongoing, the ministry is reiterating that hairstyle is not a hindrance to learning, and neither should it be used to exclude students from school. The Senate passed the Trademarks Amendment Act 2021 on Friday. Minister of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade, Senator Kamina Johnson-Smith, says the amendments to the Trademarks Act not only enable Jamaica to acknowledge consent to the Madrid Protocol in law, but also modernize Jamaica's Trademarks Act and trademark rules. Here's more in this report. Minister of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade, Senator Kamina Johnson-Smith, says the Trademark Amendment Act 2021, among other things, adds additional absolute ground of refusal of registration of a trademark, where the trademark misrepresents Jamaica or Jamaican culture.
And this bill represents yet another opportunity to strengthen our intellectual property protection framework by providing for Jamaica's participation in the system of international registration, protection, and management of trademarks.
One amendment will see changes to Section 12 of the Act, which speaks to the scope of protection of our country's name and symbols.
So now there is protection for the coat of arms and certain national, the flag and certain national symbols. But what this will add is also protection on the creation of a new 12(1) big A, is that the name Jamaica or the name of another country or abbreviations or homonyms thereof, a map of Jamaica or the national colors of Jamaica, a map of another country or its national colors, or a national emblem or symbol of Jamaica or national emblem or symbol of another country, that these must not be registered in Jamaica unless, or rather under this system, and the registrar may impose a condition or limitation on the trademark in the register to the effect, and this is the most important part, that goods or services for which the trademark is registered shall originate in Jamaica or in another country, as the case may be. So we have all been speaking for years about how upsetting it is to see, Jamaica black castor oil hair products where neither the bottle, the oil, or the label has touched Jamaican soil. We see it with other products as well, and this is intended to ensure that our name is more effectively protected.
Amendments will also aid in improving efficacy and cohesion in the administration of Jamaica's intellectual property legislation.
Clause 7 amends Section 22, which replaces the reference to a trademarks journal with the intellectual property journal. And this is to allow JIPO to maintain one intellectual property journal for all IP publications, instead of having to maintain one for trademarks, one for patents, and one for designs and geographical indications. So this is about efficiency and cohesion in the administration of our intellectual property registrations.
Senator Johnson-Smith says the government believes Jamaican brands can be leveraged for national development. She says the island has already developed a positive reputation in the world of intellectual property rights.
According to the Intellectual Property Rights Index 2020, Jamaica's IP protection regime ranks 4th in Latin America and the Caribbean. 4th in Latin America and the Caribbean. And this positive ranking reflects our commitment to shaping a national intellectual property system that benefits first and foremost the interests of the people of Jamaica and supports the growth of Jamaica's knowledge-based industries.
Opposition Senator Donna Scott Motley says the legislation will protect against the exploitation of brand Jamaica.
Some sort of concern was raised when Kanye West began to sell items, memorabilia, using the Jamaican coat of arms. And that is when Jamaica kind of stood up and said, what? How can this be permitted? That somebody from outside could come and use our emblems, just appropriate to himself the right to use an emblem in this way. And there were suggestions that every cent that he made should be given back to Jamaica. There were suggestions that he ought to be sanctioned for having done this. And JIPO did point out to us at the time, though, that immediately that he was notified that he could not, he took everything down and discontinued with his sales. But I must admit that along with our Patent and Designs Act, which we passed here recently, it does make, and I think it was the Apostille, is that leader, the Apostille Act? that we did, we see where we are moving towards reducing the bureaucracy that we encounter when we want to get things done and when we want the international recognition for the things that we do.
The bill was approved in the House of Representatives on June 1, 2021. The Calvary Missionary Church in St. Thomas recently opened a counseling center in that parish. We get more from Melvin Pennant.
It is dubbed the Eric and Pearl Chung Counseling Center, named in honor of the couple that made it a reality. They were on hand to cut the ribbon.
The Son and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Amen. Good. Yeah.
Present at the opening was church members and police officers from the parish. Also among the guests was head of the Center for Investigation of Sexual Offences and Child Abuse, CISOCA, Superintendent Charmaine Shand.
Having to, on a daily basis, interview victims that are traumatized and by extension have to cope with a staff that they themselves become traumatized after we have interviewed these witnesses, I understand how important counseling sessions are. We are traumatized. And we must have been following the news to see what is happening across Jamaica, how our children are being abused, and how necessary it is for centers like these.
She stressed the importance of counseling as salve for the society.
Counseling sessions are very important, and counseling centers provide valuable support services like counseling, therapy sessions, and the provisions of various kinds of programs. Counseling helps persons to address their problems in a positive way by helping them to clarify issues, explore options, develop strategies, and increase self-awareness. Counseling can help us to become more aware of how we are feeling so that we can act in ways that promote our mental health. And we saw where a lady a couple days ago probably had some serious issues and did not get counseling, that actually alleged to have committed suicide by driving over into the Rio Cobre River. Ladies and gentlemen, counseling centers are one of the few places where people can freely express themselves. And as a police officer, I can relate to this.
Head of the St. Thomas chapter for the Lay Magistrates Association, Severy Dixon, represented Custos for the parish, Marcia Bennett.
I know many of you had sleepless night in making today possible. The counseling center is very critical, especially in a parish like St. Thomas. This counseling center will help in the growth and development of St. Thomas. As Sister Larson and Sister Reverend Summons had said earlier on, it will reduce the level of domestic violence. And very importantly, it will help to save marriage. It will reduce the level of teenager pregnancy.
For the news on PBCJ, I am Melvin Pennant.
We now go to today's business report with host Gabriel Thompson.
In Monday's trading session, the JSE Combined Index advanced by 2,654 points to close at over 430,000 units. Overall market activity resulted from trading in 89 stocks, of which 37 advanced, 37 declined, and 15 traded firm. The Junior Market Index advanced by 32 points to close at over 3,000 units. Stocks advanced for 138 Student Living Variable Preference, Access Financial Services Limited, and Caribbean Flavors and Fragrances Limited. Stocks declined for 1834 Investments Limited, AMG Packaging and Paper Company Limited, and Barita Investments Limited. Trading firm were 138 Student Living Jamaica, CAC 2000 9.5% preference shares, and Siboney Group Limited. Mayberry Jamaican Equities Limited was the volume leader with 3.6 million units, followed by Wigtown Wind Farm Limited ordinary shares with 1.8 million units, and Trans Jamaican Highway Limited with over 1.1 million units. In foreign exchange trading for Monday, June 14, the US dollar sold for an average $151.06. The Canadian dollar ended trading at $124.06. The pound sterling traded for $213.61, and the euro sold for an average $183.42. In market data for oil, Brent crude futures rose 52 cents to $73.38 a barrel, close to a late April 2019 high. West Texas Intermediate crude futures gained 49 cents to $71.37 a barrel, near a 32-month high. And that's it for this Tuesday edition of the Business Report inside the news on PBCJ. I'm Gabrielle Thompson.
In Trinidad and Tobago, the Commissioner of Police, Gary Griffith, says the police service will intensify their efforts at least 2 to 3 hours before curfew begins each night. Speaking during Monday's press conference, Commissioner Griffith said he hoped this will put an end to the irresponsible behavior by people who try to beat the curfew. Kimberly D'Souza has more.
Increased criminal activity and persons speeding along the roadways are some of the reasons Police Commissioner Gary Griffith gave for a heightened police presence in the hours before curfew begins each night. Commissioner Griffith noted that some of the drivers caught speeding along the roadways were intoxicated.
With immediate effect, we intend to intensify our policing, especially at the period from 2 to 3 hours before each hour being the period of the commencement of curfew on that specific day, where we'll have many roadblocks, we'll be doing DUI testing, and we'll be doing speed testing as well, to put an end to the irresponsible behavior we're seeing of people flying at ridiculous rates to get home.
According to the police commissioner, there was also increased criminal activity as persons would commit robberies during this period. But he said the heightened police presence will begin from Monday night to deter such behavior. Commissioner Griffith reminded persons that the restrictions are still in place, and while hardwares can reopen on certain days as announced by the Prime Minister on Saturday, tile shops are still closed.
The latest is warehouses and companies that sell tiles. They are trying to justify that they are hardwares. You are to be closed. I do not want to have to keep reaching positions where we will advise you to be closed. You would be arrested, because we cannot continue to have people just blatantly breaking the law and then trying to use ignorance as an excuse.
He said rather than breaching the regulations, people should call the COVID hotline at 74-COVID to determine if they are allowed to remain open. Commissioner Griffith also noted an incident in which an MP encouraged people to continue vending where there were no vending signs posted along the highway. He said this type of behavior is to be avoided as the pandemic should not be politicized. Kimberly D'Souza, TTT News.
Clumsy and a rookie mistake is how one Bahamian member of parliament is describing the government's controversial Oban oil deal. More details in this report.
The bottom line is Oban was a clumsy execution of a ceremonial signing, a signing that was done according to law, but a simulation of it, that is a reproduction of it, was clumsy.
In 2018, government held a ceremonial signing with Oban Energies for $5.5 billion oil refinery and storage facility on Grand Bahama. The heads of agreement was originally signed during a press conference with Prime Minister Dr. Hubert Minnis and then Oban Energies non-executive chairman Peter Krieger, who signed on behalf of Oban. Minnis later admitted there were missteps.
Rookie's mistake.
The Prime Minister got it.
But was there a concoction of nonsense? Absolute nonsense.
Absolutely.
In this SKN Newsline report, Andrew Huey details the state of Basseterre, the capital of St. Kitts, following government-mandated lockdowns.
It's Monday morning in the capital city of Basseterre, the first working day after Prime Minister Dr. Timothy Harris would have announced the lockdown measures, or the partial lockdown measures that were announced on Friday. Now, essentially, what that means is that there's restriction of movement throughout, for the next 2 weeks, throughout the country, in a bid, the government's bid to stem the spread of the coronavirus. Now, that means only essential workers are allowed to move around, or persons can move around if they need to acquire or to access services from any of the essential services. So whether you're going to the supermarket to get food, they're going to any of the financial institutions, or to the hospital, or to the clinic to get vaccinated, that's the only time they'll be allowed to actually move about. Now, from the looks of things, just from the observation coming from the eastern end of the island, coming into town, from our observation, it seems as if most people have complied with the measures that have been implemented by the government. Meaning, we've seen very few people on the road, very few vehicles on the road. As we drove through Bastille, especially as we came through the main thoroughfare of Bastille, which is 4th Street, most of the businesses there were closed. Most of the businesses along Keon Street were closed. Cable, a lot of the cosmetic stores, the electronic stores, they were all closed in compliance with the measures being implemented by the government. And we did notice supermarkets, of course, they were open. Most of the supermarkets that we passed along the way were open. And as we said, we did see a handful of people along the streets coming along, and some would have been accessing services at the supermarkets. One of the important things, though, as we came along the Bay Road, we noticed that there was a long line of people at the Inland Revenue Department. Now, government departments, for the most part, government offices, for the most part, are closed. However, the Inland Revenue appears to be open. There are people there lining up. As you would imagine, this week, tomorrow actually, is the deadline for business taxes. So unincorporated business tax, corporate business taxes are due on the 15th of every quarter. And so this month being that deadline, a lot of people were lined up at the Inland Revenue Department to basically fulfill their tax obligations. Aside from that, I have not seen any of the other government departments or government buildings open. We did drive along Church Street. We noticed the government headquarters was the building, the entrance to the building was open. But most government offices, based on the mandate from the government, are closed for the next 2 weeks. We'll continue to monitor the situation to see whether or not the responses we've seen today will continue for most of the rest of the 2 weeks. But we will see what will happen and continue to monitor to see if this will help to decrease the number of cases of coronavirus here in St. Kitts and Nevis. Reporting from the Bay Road, Bastille, St. Kitts, I'm Andre Huey for SKN Newsline.
In sports, Tokyo Olympics organizers say athletes could be kicked out of the Olympics if they violate virus rules, including daily testing and mask wearing. The organizers gave the warning on Tuesday as they unveiled updated guidelines just over 5 weeks before the opening ceremony. The latest and final edition of the rules for athletes runs 70 pages, complete with comic strips intended to explain the complex web of rules that organizers say will keep the games safe. Officials hope the restrictions will build confidence among Japan's skeptical public that the games can be held safely, even as that country struggles to contain the pandemic. Olympic officials and Tokyo 2020 organizers emphasized new specific penalties for athletes if they violate rules, including warnings, fines, or even temporary or permanent ineligibility or exclusion from the games. Officials did not clarify whether that sanction meant athletes could be barred from future Olympics as well as Tokyo. In the weather report, the Meteorological Service has given an update on Tropical Storm Bill, which formed on Monday. At 4 a.m., the center of Tropical Storm Bill was located near latitude 38.5 degrees north, longitude 67.2 degrees west. Bill is moving rapidly toward the northeast near 50 kilometers per hour, and this general motion is expected to continue through Wednesday. Maximum sustained winds have increased to near 85 kilometers per hour with higher gusts. Little change in strength is expected today, following gradual weakening tonight and Wednesday morning, when Bill will be moving over colder water. The system is forecast to become a post-tropical low by tonight and dissipate on Wednesday. The Meteorological Service will continue to monitor the progress of this system. And that's the news. Thanks for watching. And as always, stay safe.